All right, let's kick off the week by getting right into it. There's a lot to cover today.
Definitely a lot going on in the markets.
First up, a whole bunch of companies facing some legal trouble.
Ooh,
Yeah, starting with Match Group, the company behind Tinder.
right.
Well, they're being investigated for potentially misleading investors about their user growth.
Hmm. I guess swiping right can't solve every problem.
Looks like it. And Rosen Law Firm, they're also looking into Unisys Corporation.
What's going on with them?
Seems they might not have been totally upfront about their cybersecurity risks. That's never good.
Especially in this digital age, any hint of a cover-up and investors get nervous?
Speaking of nervous investors, Light & Wonder, their stock, it took a big hit.
Oh, why is that?
Well, a court sided with Aristocrat Technologies in a copyright infringement case.
Ah, I see.
Apparently, Light & Wonder's Dragon Train game is a little too similar to something Aristocrat created.
Companies got to protect their intellectual property. These lawsuits get expensive.
And it's not just those companies. AstraZeneca is facing a class action lawsuit, too.
What are they being accused of?
Allegations of insurance fraud in China.
Wow, that's serious. That could really impact their operations, especially in a market like China.
And healthcare, that's another area with some controversy.
Really?
Yeah, the PASS group, they're in the spotlight.
Why is that?
A report from Hindenburg Research is accusing them of some, let's just say, shady practices.
Like what?
Well, they're saying PASS is exploiting taxpayer-funded healthcare programs.
Those are some serious allegations.
Absolutely. This could really hurt their reputation and their finances.
Definitely something to keep an eye on. And was there another company you mentioned?
Oh, right. Five9 Inc. They're also under investigation.
What happened there?
It seems they may have overstated their business strength.
How so?
Well, they're accused of downplaying how macroeconomic challenges are hitting their customers.
I see.
And they're also accused of misrepresenting their sales or retention figures.
So a lot of companies in a bit of hot water.
Yeah, quite a few.
Yeah.
So with all this going on, what should investors be considering?
Well, first thing, it's important to remember these are just accusations right now.
Right.
The companies have a chance to defend themselves. But for investors, it's a reminder to do your research.
And due diligence is always important.
Exactly. Look into a company's financials, their legal history, their business practices, all of that, before making any investment decisions.
Great advice. Let's switch gears now, move away from lawsuits, and talk about some general company and market news.
Okay, sounds good.
Walmart, the retail giant, they're going for a new look, a brand refresh.
Interesting. What are they doing?
A bolder logo, a new word mark inspired by, get this, Sam Walton's signature trucker hat.
Huh. Focusing on their roots. But I also see them pushing their digital presence too.
Definitely trying to stay ahead of the curve with more and more shopping happening online.
Makes sense.
And speaking of staying ahead, Axon Enterprise, the law enforcement tech company.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Well, they've been performing incredibly well. A $1,000 investment 5 years ago would be worth over $7,500 today.
Wow, that's the power of compound returns for you.
Absolutely. Now, B2 Gold, the gold mining company, they've made a change.
Oh, what's that?
They're lowering their quarterly dividend.
Bold move. Why are they doing that?
It seems they want to free up funds for growth projects.
I see. Always a bit risky cutting dividends, but they must be confident about those projects.
They are, and they're also planning to buy back some of their own shares.
Which could signal they believe their stock is currently undervalued.
Now, Mark Cuban, he's been pretty vocal lately.
What's he been saying?
He's criticizing Amazon's seller fees, calls them insane and unsustainable.
Interesting. A lot of businesses have been expressing concerns about Amazon's fees lately.
He's even advising against investing in companies that rely too heavily on Amazon.
That's a pretty strong stance.
Cuban's also been talking about counterfeit products, a lot coming from China.
Right, that's a huge issue.
He's proposing some pretty big changes, like making importers post big bonds to ensure they comply with regulations.
That would definitely shake things up a bit.
Shifting gears again, FTAI Aviation, another company with strong long-term performance.
How so?
A $100 investment 5 years ago would now be worth over $1,000.
The aviation sector seems to be doing pretty well then.
It is. But let's end by talking about the housing market. Those rising mortgage rates, they're still causing problems.
Yeah, they're definitely having an impact.
The average 30-year fixed rate, it's over 7% now.
Makes buying a home a lot more expensive.
And we're seeing fewer mortgage applications because of it.
Is there any good news on that front?
Will Zillow, they're predicting a slight increase in existing home sales and some modest home value growth for this year.
So maybe the market is finding a new balance.
Maybe so, but we'll have to keep watching those interest rates closely.
For sure. A lot can change in a year. A lot can change in a year.
Definitely, lots of moving parts.
Yeah.
But hey, let's talk about some good news for a change.
Okay, I like good news.
Yoshiharu Global Co. They specialize in Japanese cuisine.
I know them, yeah.
Well, they've secured financing commitments of up to $11 million.
That's great. What are they going to do with that?
It'll give them some working capital, help them expand both here in the U.S. and internationally.
Expansion is always good to hear. And speaking of which, there's a lot of M&A activity happening, too.
You're right, the M&A class action firm, they're looking into a few proposed mergers.
Oh, really? Which ones?
Well, we've got Accolade and Transcarent merging, then there's Quantrix Corporation and Akoya Biosciences.
Huh. Interesting.
And Issei Bancorp is merging with CMB Financial Corporation.
It seems like everyone's merging with everyone else these days.
It does, doesn't it?
Well, mergers can be a good sign, but it's important to make sure shareholders are protected.
Absolutely. And speaking of keeping an eye on things, Interfor Corporation, they're going to release their fourth quarter and fiscal 2024 financial results on February 13th.
Okay, and is there anything else happening with that?
Yeah, they're also having an analyst conference call the next day if you want to hear more.
I'll have to mark that on my calendar, see how the forestry and lumber industry is doing.
Well, I think we've covered quite a bit today.
We have lots of investor alerts, company news, even touched on some market trends.
Hopefully everyone listening feels a bit more informed about what's happening in the financial world.
It's all about staying informed and doing your research, especially in this constantly changing market.
Couldn't agree more. But before we wrap up, I want to leave everyone with something to think about.
Oh, what's that?
We talked about Walmart's rebranding today, trying to look more modern.
Right, with their new logo and everything.
Well, it made me think, with so many changes happening in retail, what will it take for those traditional brick-and-mortar stores to really thrive in the future?
That's a good question. A lot to consider there.
Definitely. We'll be back tomorrow with more financial news and insights to help everyone stay ahead of the game.
Until then, happy investing, everyone. Yeah, it's a really competitive landscape out there.
It is. But let's move on to some positive news now.
Sounds good to me. What do you have?
Yoshiharu Global Co., the Japanese cuisine restaurant operator.
Yeah, I know them.
Well, they've managed to secure financing commitments up to $11 million.
Wow, that's fantastic news for them. What are they planning on doing with it?
Well, it's going to give them the working capital they need, and it'll also help them expand, both here in the U.S. and internationally.
That's always great to hear. And, speaking of expansion, we've got a lot of M&A activity going on at the moment.
You're right. The M&A class action firm is actually investigating a few proposed mergers right now.
Oh, really? Like who?
Well, Accolade and Transcarent, they're merging.
Okay.
And we've also got Quantrix Corporation. They're joining forces with Akoya Biosciences.
Interesting.
And to top it all off, Issei Bancorp is merging with CMB Financial Corporation.
It seems like everyone's merging these days.
Yeah, it really does feel that way.
Well, mergers and acquisitions, they can be a positive sign for the market, but it's so important to make sure those shareholders are protected throughout the whole process.
Couldn't agree more. Speaking of keeping an eye on things, Interfor Corporation will be releasing their fourth quarter and fiscal 2024 financial results pretty soon on February 13th.
All right. And will there be anything else going on with that?
Yeah, they'll be hosting an analyst conference call on the 14th, the next day. So if you're interested in hearing more about their performance, you can check that out.
I'll have to add that to my calendar then. Always interested to see how the forestry and lumber industry is performing.
Well, it feels like we've covered a ton of ground today.
We have, haven't we? Lots of investor alerts, company news, and we even managed to touch on some market trends.
Yeah, hopefully everyone listening feels a bit more prepared to navigate the financial landscape this week.
It's really all about staying informed, and doing your research, especially in such a dynamic market.
Couldn't agree more. And with that, I think it's time to wrap things up for today.
I think you're right.
But before we go, I want to leave everyone with a final thought. Earlier, we talked about all those investor alerts, right? All those companies facing legal challenges.
Yeah, it was quite a list.
It got me thinking about the importance of transparency and accountability, not just for companies, but for investors too.
That's a really important point.
It's easy to get caught up in the hype, to chase those big returns. But we have to remember that investing always comes with risks.
Absolutely. Risk is part of the game.
Exactly. So, as you're making your investment decisions this week, remember to ask yourself, am I comfortable with the risks involved? And am I doing everything I can to manage those risks responsibly?
Those are some great questions for our listeners to consider.
We'll be back tomorrow with more market insights. helping everyone stay informed and make those smart financial decisions.
Until then, happy investing, everyone!